Hey young designers, we're going to talk about your stroke fill variations form of changing your logos. So this is a logo variations assignment and we're just going to talk about changing the stroke and fill. So when you're doing your stroke fill variations, by the way, I have 12 of them here. That doesn't mean I expect you to do 12. I also, in the previous video, showed you to make 6 to start with, but those are, again, a starting point. Some of you will get to 3 and some of you might get to 15. It all depends on the amount of work that you do within each set of vectors. I want this project to be more about time use. So if you take one day to make all your vectors, that's a possibility. And again, some people will do 3 in that day and some people will do 15 depending on the things that they do to their vectors. So it's almost like time on task. I'm going to grade you based on how much you do within the time that you decide to spend on it before you move on to the next project. We're going to obviously go to Illustrator, and we already set this up. Also, it's good to note that this is here so that we can basically have a reference of what our logo normally looks like, because we want to change a lot of things about it. So there's a lot of ways you could start this assignment. The first thing I'm going to do, because I have some hidden elements, is move out some of these ovals. I'm going to leave the ovals in for some, just because I want some of my variations, obviously I want them all to be different. So I'm going to have some have flames and some not show the flames as one of their variations. So that's kind of like an actual vector subtraction. Now, by the way, when I say vector, all of these shapes that you have here that are created by these paths are called vectors. So all those words can be used to talk about these things. So if I say path or I say vector or I say shape, all those things really mean the same thing in this situation. You have to decide in the beginning if you want your entire logo to have the same, similarities in the aspects of the vectors, and the aspects are going to be chosen up here or over here as far as your color and your color fill and your color of stroke. But this is your fill and this is your stroke too, so you can really just stay up in this area. It makes things a lot simpler. You may choose to work with one vector at a time, which I pretty much want you to do with at least some of your different variations, or you might choose to use more than one vector at a time. Like I might choose this area, plus obviously I want my other flames. That actually brings me to a good point. My flames are separate, so what I want to do, because I want them to always stay the same, like if I decided to make these flames red, I would also want these flames to be red. That's something that's going to be constant in my logo. So I'm going to go ahead and group them. I'm going to do that with each of mine. So if you have I don't know, let's say a paw print, which is made of several shapes, and you always want the paw print to all have the same elements, you would want to select both by holding Shift and using the selection tool to click them, and then pressing Command G. This way, when I make my flames, I'm going to go up here like I said, when I make my flames a color, it'll be constant throughout all the flames whenever I do that. Now, color isn't the only thing I want you to change when you're working with your strokes. You might change things or your paths, you might be changing the color of the stroke itself. You might be changing the thickness of the stroke. There's lots more things to change. You could change whether or not your stroke is uniform. And I'm going to make that a little bit bigger so you can see what that's actually doing. So this area is making it so that your line thickness changes throughout the vector. Now, unfortunately, we can't really control at this point which areas are thin and thick. So basically, you see what it can do, and if you don't like it, you can select another one, but you can't really control it at this state. But what other things you could do is move along the rest of the line. So under basic, there's some great ones. So maybe you wanted to make part of your logo look like it's hand-drawn. This is a great area to go. There's also other things in this, well, there's things right here, but there's also non-default things in this folder, which is really where I want you to explore the most. You've done it before in some other projects, possibly. So you might know that there's some really great things under artistic. However, you should explore any of these folders. Vector Pack and Wacom 60 brushes don't really apply to us. Set of my logo as if it was done in neon lights. So that's one thing that you can do, but I don't want you to just do one change to everything. So if you're going to do the whole thing, limit yourself on how many you do that to, and give me at least an equal number where you're changing more aspects of the logo instead of just changing them all to the same thing. So this shows that in some places I used only one element throughout all the pieces, and in other cases each vector shape basically has its own elements, okay, throughout the entire logo. And that's actually true for most of them in this case. You can see that this one obviously just uses a 3D element to everything, but most of them have, I basically took one vector at a time and made changes, and that's what makes them more interesting. Okay, but it is cool to see what they might look like with just one, especially when you're using the styles. So it might be, worth it to do that to a few of them as well. All right, so to make that rule very clear, for every one that you do where the whole thing is the same, you should do one that the whole thing is different, meaning that we take different vectors and do different things to each vector within the logo. Also remember that in your fills, you have the ability to add gradients, which are basically fades. Gradients is one of my favorite folders to check out. So I'm going to go to metals and maybe make a nice cool looking metal squirrel man over there. And then I might go over here and maybe go into this folder again and check out patterns, which is another great place to hang out. The rest of these are mostly just different colors, which is also fine. But you know that you could also take colors from up here and you basically have everything that you need. You could also double click here to be able to choose color. So if I wanted like a gray, I would have to do that. All right, but anyway, I was saying about patterns. I can go in here and get all these different patterns that they have. Now, you won't know what they are until you actually look at them, so it's always a good idea to open things when you're exploring, but you could see where this one is going. Okay, so the real purpose of this oval, as I might have told you in a previous video, is to cover the edges of my flames because they were messy. So being that we have that luxury in Illustrator of being able to just make a thicker line, make the shape make the shape none, which is what that red slash is, and then I can place it over the other oval, and it basically helps me hide all those little edges that I didn't do my best work on. But you can see that I basically worked with every vector in this logo separately, and that is the counter to doing everything the same. So again, give me a balance of those things if you're going to do things that are all the same. All right, well, I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Please do explore the folders, not just the things that are on the surface. Okay, so use those folders to explore. And same thing over here. There's folders, not just the things that you've already done. And use them all. When you're doing your stroke fill variations, by the way, I have 12 of them here. That doesn't mean I expect you to do 12. I also, in the previous video, showed you to make 6 to start with. But those are, again, a starting point. Some of you will get to 3 and some of you might get to 15. It all depends on the amount of work that you do within each set of vectors. I want this project to be more about time use. So if you take one day to make all your vectors, that's a possibility. And again, some people will do 3 in that day and some people will do 15 depending on the things that they do to their vectors. So it's almost like time on task. I'm going to grade you based on how much you do within the time that you decide to spend on it before you move on to the next project. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you're learning to make your logos look even cooler so that you can have some different variations for your logo. Who knows, one of them might end up being your new logo that you like it so much that you don't like the other one as much. That's actually how I got my flames, because my original logo had a big triangle in the background instead of even having all these flames that I put in at a later point. All right, so please feel free to leave positive feedback or any feedback at all, and please subscribe. Take care, Titans.